There's a whole lot to get to with regard to the Biden family scandals. Let's just scratch the surface with one of the senators really trying to get to the bottom of it. He's gotten to the bottom of a ton of it already. He's Senator Ron Johnson of the Badger State of Wisconsin. I referred to you as the honey badger in the Senate yesterday, and I realized, well, you're from the Badger State, so this makes sense. So you can steal that if you want, Senator.
I am. Well, appreciate that.
I want to start first with the announcement from the FBI yesterday that they don't intend to comply with the subpoena over this whistleblower's letter. There's a document that the FBI is holding on to. It's a unclassified document that claims to have details about then Vice President Biden having a meeting with a foreign entity about a financial arrangement in exchange for policy during the Obama administration. If I'm mischaracterizing this, please let me know. But the FBI isn't going to hand it over. What now?
Well, that doesn't surprise me. Apparently in their letter to Senator Grassley and I think Chairman Comer, they said they would go through an accommodation process, which means they'll show a little bit of leg. Hard to say how much. But again, this just is further indication of the corruption within federal law enforcement. We know that the FBI had the Hunter Biden computer in December 2019. As they walk out the door, they basically put a threat or threatened Mr. McIsaac, saying that their history is that the people that don't talk about these things don't get in trouble, is in effect what they said. Then they went about and for the next year engaged in a pre-sabotage campaign in case that laptop ever surfaced, including things like unsolicited briefings Senator Grassley and I to say that we are targets of Russian disinformation. I wonder how it got in the media that our report was going to be Russian disinformation. By the way, it somewhat worked because the day after we issued our report, Mr. McIsaac was no longer afraid to offer that computer up. They offered it to us. Now, because we were already warned, we thought, well, this could be Russian disinformation. We ought to be careful. So guess who we contacted? We contacted the FBI. And of course, they gave us a runaround for weeks to the point where Mr. McIsaac got impatient, offered that to Rudy Giuliani and the New York Post, and the rest is history from that standpoint. So again, when you've experienced the corruption up close and personal, when you've literally had operations run against you, you don't have a whole lot of faith in some of the higher ups. And again, I think most people operating these agencies are people of integrity, but we've got a real problem with the deep state. It's pervasive. It's populated by leftists. And they don't give up their secrets easily.
Well, and that letter, the false letter, the fake letter, the deceptive letter that said that the Hunter Biden laptop story was actually Russian disinformation, we're now learning that it appears CIA agents, active agents working for the CIA at the time, actually solicited signatures for that letter, which sort of gave it the false imprimatur that this was a conclusion the CIA had reached, which they had not reached. In fact, DNI Ratcliffe at the time actually said, no, we have no indication that this is Russian disinformation. How do you clean that up, though, Senator Johnson?
So again, and we also know that Secretary of State Anthony Blinken prompted that letter.
Yeah.
And of course, we went back to our interview with him. He wouldn't interview with us before the election like 10 or 11 other State Department officials did. He waited till after he'd already won, after his fraudulent letter had what they were hoping it would accomplish. He interviewed with us in December, and he lied to us. We asked him point blank, did you ever email Hunter Biden? He said no. Why did he say no? Why didn't he just say, well, I didn't know him well, might have emailed a couple times. It's because he didn't want us checking his emails because they would probably have been pretty incriminating. Plus, now we know his wife, who also worked at the State Department, she was basically the conduit. She was doing the emailing between herself and Hunter Biden to set up, for example, a phone call between then Deputy Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and Burisma's U.S. lobbying group, a Democrat lobbying group called Blue Star Strategy. So I know this is getting in the weeds, this is detail, but it just shows you the depth, the pervasiveness of the corruption and how the Bidens and Democrats in general have the cover of people inside government, certainly in the corrupt and complicit media as well.
Well, we don't mind it being in the weeds. We're smart enough to be able to follow these stories, Senator Johnson, and it's why we've got you for 10 minutes as well. And by the way, they do this by design. We just saw Congressman Comer's press conference yesterday where Hunter Biden and James Biden had set up to 15 different shell corporations and bank accounts. They try to make it complicated. They do that on purpose.
Well, again, Senator Grassley and I pretty well laid out all anybody really needed to see in terms of the corruption of the Biden family. We showed millions of dollars of suspicious wire transactions. We've laid out most of those companies in our report as well. I'm glad that Chairman Comer is building on our report, and it's getting greater attention, at least within conservative news outlets. But if you go back to 2020, in the midst of our investigation, we had news reports, again, accusing us of soliciting and disseminating Russian disinformation. They were already marginalizing our report before we ever issued it. Yeah. And of course, our report was based on U.S. Treasury records and interviews with U.S. persons. There was no Russian disinformation in it whatsoever, but that's how the media treated us. Now at least they can't accuse James Comer of having Russian disinformation in his report.
Senator Johnson, Antony Blinken has now kind of denied any involvement in the solicitation for this letter. He did use very specific language, though. I never asked for the letter. I never solicited the letter. Is it time to bring him under oath before a Senate committee and have him swear what his involvement was here and what the conversations were?
Yeah, I mean, he's trying to weasel his way out of this. I wish we could bring him before the Senate, but Democrats have no interest whatsoever in uncovering this corruption and these lies. But the House has the subpoena power. And so, yeah, it is well past time. We'll do everything we can to provide the information to the House committees when they do subpoena him. But he's got a lot of explaining to do.
Yeah. Also, Senator Johnson, while I've got you, in your capacity of as a committee member of Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs, the border disaster that is exploding right now before our eyes, and just a couple of hours from now when Title 42 officially goes away, most of the congressmen that I speak to say that this is an impeachable offense for Secretary Mayorkas. They plan to move forward with an impeachment in the House. What do you think that conversation looks like when it reaches the Senate?
Well, of course, Democrats will cover for this administration. I mean, let's face it, we've offered amendments to just complete building the wall that we paid for, and Democrats uniformly vote against that type of thing. So they have no interest in border security. Remember, President Obama declared it a humanitarian crisis when we were encountering and apprehending 2,000 people a day. We've been over 11,000 people a day, and that will skyrocket above and beyond that. But again, once again, the complicit and corrupt media has by and large ignored this. They're going to have a hard time ignoring it past this point now.
I was struck yesterday by the appearance from Donald Trump in that town hall at CNN where the host, Caitlin Collins, said, you know, if this debt ceiling thing isn't resolved, then the economy is going to tank and people are going to lose their jobs. Senator Johnson, the economy is already tanking. People have already lost their jobs. I think they're kind of showing how out of touch they are with how bad things are. And by the way, part of the reason why the economy is so bad is because of the out of control spending that the House is actually now trying to get a hold of. Is there any stomach in the Senate to actually work with House Republicans on that bill? I know Chuck Schumer doesn't want to bring it up, but I got to think that some of the senators, even on the Democrat side, recognize that they got to fix this.
Again, they're pretty loyal in terms of their party structure, and because their overall uniform goal is power, and they want power. And one of the ways they get power is to keep growing government because they're the party of big government. But you know, just to show you how reasonable the House bill is. Prior to the pandemic, the federal government in total spent $4.4 trillion in fiscal year 2019. Of course, then we went on a spending spree, spending 6.5, 6.8, 6.3. What the House is doing is not resetting spending back to 2019 levels, adjusted for inflation and population growth. They're just adjusting it to 2022, $6.2 trillion. An eminently reasonable proposal. Throw in the REINS Act, it's a pro-growth measure. Permitting reform, also pro-growth. What the House passed is eminently reasonable. It's literally the bare minimum of what the American public should expect if we're going to further mortgage their kids' future by increase the debt ceiling. But the Democrats will have no part in it. And again, they will be backed up by a compliant, complicit, and corrupt media.
If Republicans are going to retake the White House, they're going to have to win Ron Johnson's state of Wisconsin. And whoever the nominee ends up being, they better have Ron Johnson by their side as much as possible. Senator Johnson, it's always great to talk with you. Thanks for the work you're doing.
Have a great day.
There's more to come on O'Connor Tonight. Keep it here. It's Salem News Channel.